So today we're talking about, well, I'm giving you 3 tips. These are my top 3 tips for self worth when you're in a relationship. One of the things that I'm so passionate about, so incredibly passionate about, in case you missed it, I am so passionate about this, is talking about self worth. Because it was when I understood, when I learned, and yeah, this has been a lifelong journey for me. I am 47 years old, so it is not like I just came out of the womb and knew this. 47 years is what it has taken me to learn that everything, whatever you want, whatever it is that you want in your life, whether it is love, whether it is money, whether it is, job, whether it is everything, everything comes down to your self-worth. How you feel about you, how you feel you are, your worth in the world, the value that you put on yourself. And one of the places that we tend to give away our power, one of the places where we tend to leak power is in relationships. I have done it. Although I have to say this, I have to preface this by saying I've been in a relationship for 32 years. My husband and I have been together for 32 years. And those 32 years, I'll be honest, it wasn't like it was all unicorns and rainbows and wonderful. There have definitely been times where it was challenging. And I want to tell you these 3 tips based on the things that I have learned from being in a relationship. And then now as well, the things that I have learned from being a life coach, from being a coach who really focuses on worthiness and has a whole brand that is called Worthy. And the number one thing, so I'm going to give you 3 tips today for relationships, self-worth in relationship. The number one tip that I would give you is that self-worth is an inside job. The very words say it. Self-worth. It doesn't say him worth, her worth, shoes worth, money worth. Your self-worth comes from you. It can only ever come from you. And no one can ever give you what you are not willing to give yourself. I'm going to repeat that for those of you in the back who may not have heard it. No one can ever give you what you cannot give yourself. And often what happens is we have this romanticized view of relationship, right? If you watched Jerry Maguire, we all want that line where Jerry Maguire goes to her, whatever her name was, and says, "You complete me." That's what we're looking for, right? We're looking for the person who's going to come and I'm going to be the 50 and you're going to be the 50. And then together we make a lovely whole. And that's why, if you look at the stats, what is it? First marriages, about 60% end in divorce. Second marriages, 75% or something end in divorce. Third marriages, 90-something% end in divorce. You know why? Because we're always looking for the other person to complete us. We're coming into relationships where we don't love ourselves. We're coming into relationships where we don't trust ourselves. We're coming into relationships where we have all these hurts, all these things, and we're expecting that this person, him, her, they, is gonna complete me. They will fill all those gaps, all those holes that we have that we can't give ourselves. We don't trust ourselves. We don't love ourselves. We're looking for them to give us security. And then we wonder why the relationship falls apart. Because can you imagine, first of all, the pressure that you're putting on that one person to be your everything? There's no one person on this planet who can fill everything that you need. And I'll go back again. I'm going to say this, please. If there's one thing I'd love for you to hear today, it is this. No one, no thing can give you what you cannot give yourself. And so that's where it starts in relationship. The number one tip is self-worth can only come from you. It is the value that you put on yourself. It is the love that you give yourself. It is the belief that you have about what is possible for yourself. You trying to get somebody else who's coming into that relationship with their own baggage, their own stuff, is a recipe for disaster. And sometimes we're so afraid of being by ourselves that we're willing to compromise. We're like, oh, yeah, yes, I don't trust them. Yes, but I don't want to be on my own. And so we settle for these relationships. And so the first place, if you're in a relationship, if you're looking to be in a relationship, is to look inward, to say, what is it that I need? What is it that I think the relationship is going to make me feel? And then start by giving that to yourself. So number one, self-worth can only ever come from you. The second thing that I have learned in being in relationship, and this applies, it doesn't matter whether it is a romantic relationship, a work relationship, whatever the relationships are. Number two is communication. We go into relationships and we assume they know what we want. We assume that they know that on Valentine's Day, I want flowers. We assume that they know that in the morning that I'd like for you to make me a cup of coffee. We assume that they know that, they need to pick up their socks off the floor because it annoys you. We assume all of these things, and yet we don't communicate them. We're expecting this person that we're in relationship with to be like Miss Cleo, or what was the other lady's name who used to do the mind reading? We're expecting them to read our minds. I don't know what you want. I can't give you what you don't tell me you want. And you're so right? Jeannie nailed it. She said, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and of me. Communication. A wonderful quote that I once heard said, no one has ever broken your heart. No one has ever broken your heart. They broke your expectations. And so many of us are in these relationships where we have expectations of what it's going to be like to be in the relationship, how they're going to treat us in the relationship. And we sometimes don't communicate those expectations. And then we wonder why things go sideways. And then, oh my gosh, he broke my heart. She broke my heart. They broke my heart. No, they didn't. They broke your expectations because you had expectations about what it looked like to be in this relationship. Did they know what those expectations were? Were your expectations aligned? Did you both agree that, oh yeah, this is how it's going to be on Valentine's Day? We go for Valentine's Day dinner, or we go for whatever it is. But expectation is the biggest source of pain. We're expecting something to happen. We're expecting someone to treat us in a certain way. And when they don't, then we're like, oh my gosh, they broke my heart. Oh my gosh, they didn't do these things that I wanted to. Did they know they were supposed to do them? Did they know that that's what it meant to be in a relationship with you? And so I really urge you to think about, are you communicating what's important to you? Are you communicating what they do that you like, what they do that you don't like? Are you aligned in terms of your expectations? Are you valuing you in that relationship and by valuing yourself, communicating the values that are important to you? So number one was self-worth can only ever come from you. Number two tip is that communication is vital to any relationship, and expectations are the source of our greatest pain. The third tip that I'd love to give you is around boundaries. Oh, boundaries. Again, related to communication. Have you communicated in your relationship what your boundaries are? That if you cross this line, it's game over. Or if you cross this line, these are the consequences of you doing whatever it is. I love this quote from Maya Angelou where she said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. But what happens a lot of the time is we have these boundaries that we've created that, okay, if he ever cheats on me or if she ever beats me, I'm out. Then the thing happens. They cheat on you, they beat you, whatever it is that happens. And you negotiate with yourself your boundary. You negotiate your own boundary. You had a boundary when you came in, you're like, if you ever cheat on me, then I'm leaving. Then the day he cheats on you, you're sitting there like, well, maybe we were going through a bad time in our relationship. Well, maybe it was just this one time. And then you make excuses and then you move. You move your boundary. You change your boundary. And then think about what that does in terms of how you see yourself, the value you're putting on yourself. And then second of all, how they see you. And so now they're like, oh, she said if I did this thing, or he said if I did this thing, then they would leave, or this would be the consequence. And then the thing happened, or I did the thing, and they stayed. They didn't do anything, or the punishment, whatever the thing was, they didn't do anything. So they're just like full of air. And so now you set yourself up in a position where your boundaries are no longer respected. You don't even respect your own boundaries. This is about your self-worth. Do you value your own word? Are you in integrity with your own word? Do you, when you say, I promise myself this, do you stick with that? Or do you get into this negotiation with yourself? It's conditional. Well, when this, then that. So do you see how in relationship you are eroding your self-worth? And so those are the three key things. I have learned in this lifetime a lot of lessons about self-worth and being in relationship. But I'd really love for you to consider those three things that I shared with you. That number one, self-worth is an inside job. No money, no person, no thing can ever give you self-worth. Your value is about how you see yourself, your self-worth. Number two, communication. Communicating the expectations within the relationship. What is important to you? What are the values that you have within the relationship? And have you told the other person? Are you aligned in terms of what that looks like in terms of relational expectations? And then number three, when you create a boundary, when you set a boundary for yourself in a relationship, are you in integrity with that boundary? Do you value yourself enough to respect honoring that boundary no matter what? Those are the three things I wanted to share with you about relationship. And I want to remind you, please, to remember this always, that you are worthy to be, to do, to have whatever it is your heart desires. And a quote that I read this week said this. It said, loving yourself is not vanity, it's sanity. That's a quote from Katrina Maya. Loving yourself is not vanity, it's sanity. Valuing yourself is not vanity. And so that's one thing that I urge you, especially as you're in relationship, that you are worthy to have a relationship that makes you feel good, to be in a relationship where you feel loved, but you do not need a relationship to feel loved, to feel secure.